Welcome. And I have to say, if you're joining us for this and you're seeing it through, I think that's wonderful. It definitely means you have an open mind. I think these sort of sections, in some ways, I think test us greatly. So I'm going to go ahead and make the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll try and continue with the sort of Talmudic analysis, although it doesn't come close to the kind of intense and rigorous Talmudic analysis of these words and these concepts and these laws. But we're going to go on, and of course our subject is consanguineous relations and the prohibition against that. You know, if it weren't for the fact that people were tempted to do these things and to explore these kinds of things, it wouldn't have to be legislated. And so the truth is that any one of these things are things that people that people at times, or different people at different times and in different circumstances, are willing to experiment with and you know, and follow their desires. And I was trying to meditate a little bit about, if you might want to call it, a justification of these laws, regardless of what, you know, genetic implications they may have and negative genetic effects, etc. But beyond that, just the whole, how can I put it, dynamic. Hold on one second.
Rabbi,
Hold on one second, Harlan. Just can you hold the thought? Just let me finish.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Please. That there's the whole dynamic of accepting God as the creator of the universe and seeing ourselves as being so dependent for our very lives on God's kindness, and accepting that Elohim, God as our Elohim, that because God is asking us to do these things or commanding us to do these things, it's our response to that. And it's deeply embedded in the notion of understanding what it is to accept God as the creator of the universe. Harlan, go ahead, please. Thank you.
I don't understand. We should have relationships with our own people, but in the modern days, we know about recessive genes.
Yes,
That, you know, if you marry your cousin, but in the ancient days, they didn't have recessive. They didn't know about recessive genes, but yet they knew all this. It's amazing how they knew the relatives shouldn't have incest with each other. They didn't know about recessive genes then.
Right. They may have observed certain types of things happening, though. They were very observant about things. I think that the fact is that in some ways we're less observant, especially when it comes to nature. Ask the average person where you always see a new moon, and if they even understand what you mean by new moon, which there's a fair chance they will, but I don't know that they would know that you see it in the western sky, that you never see a new moon in the eastern sky, because they haven't looked. Because they're told, you know, they're either, so much of it is just simply either learned or accepted, etc. And you know, the Babylonians were actually pretty amazing astronomers, because of course their belief in astrology, we've mentioned that, but the truth is they observed it. And you know, even Maimonides, in some of his astronomical writings, is aware of the precession of the equinoxes, which is a pretty phenomenal thing to be aware of. Yeah, Lauren.
So I thought West and East were relative to where, you know, which hemisphere, for instance, you live in. So
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I mean, the West is the same as always West. If you look at the globe, for example, you recognize, right? If you're facing north, East is always to your right and West is always to your left, if you're facing north.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are above or below the equator. You follow me?
so it doesn't matter. Orientation doesn't matter.
No, but the seasons are reversed. That's true. The seasons are reversed.
And the water goes the opposite way.
Yes, I know when you
Swirls oppositely.
right.
Yes.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Right. It's either clockwise or counterclockwise. Right. Yes. That of course
Okay.
has to do with the Earth's spin. Correct. Anyway, but
Correct.
we are moving far away now from our subject. All
I
right.
don't know. Ervat, I was just looking it up, is,
Yes.
has to do with fluids. So that kind of works.
Oh, really? Okay. Because I really
Yeah, I just looked it up. It also refers to Joseph uses it when the brothers come and he says, "You're spying on my erva. You don't want to." And he's talking about like the source of the Nile.
Okay, so that's
Maybe.
an additional
Yeah.
thing, because I've always understood, or at least when I did understand what the word erva means, it means nakedness. Nakedness. And I think that
In other words, the sexual organs or
correct.
the sexual
Right,
parts.
right.
Yes.
Being aware of, so back in rabbinical school, this is worth sharing, and I don't think I've shared it to this point, that there's our professor of Bible who taught me these early chapters of Genesis, Hanan Brichto, Dr. Hanan Brichto, points out the difference between nudity and nakedness. On a physical kind of level, they may in fact describe the same condition, but there's a difference between nudity, which is to bare something, right, to lay it bare, and nakedness, which has the idea of exposure. And so there are two different emotional, you might say, connections between the two. So Adam and Eve were originally born nude, right? They were nude. But after they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they became aware of their nakedness. And that's the erva, right? And of course, that's essentially the place where we feel exposed and conscious of it.
Wasn't Noah, when he got drunk, became
Yes.
naked, and his sons
Correct.
didn't want to see him naked?
Correct. They wanted to be respectful of that. That's a basic level of respect, and it's a way of absolute. It's if you want to humiliate, if they want to humiliate someone, that's the way you can easily humiliate them that way, by exposing their sexual organs. So
Are we the only ones that are clothed?
Say that again.
Animals are not clothed.
No, they don't have because they haven't eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Although it is a story that Adam and Eve gave them to eat of it as well, but it had more to do with the idea of them procreating. They're also required to procreate. But yes, this is very deep psychological stuff that goes on there. So, but that's
aphrodisiacs.
Yeah, something else. Okay, moving into something else. All right. So let's go here, or let's take a look into the verse itself. So, ervat bat eshet avicha. So remember, we're describing all the potential consanguineous relationships, right? The nakedness of the daughter of your father's wife. So the daughter of your father's wife would be your half sister, right? Okay. Although, okay, here we go. Moledet avicha. In other words, she is the offspring of your father. Because let's suppose a woman was married, she had children, and then she was widowed or divorced, and then married your father, you actually would have no blood relationship to your half sister there. And I'm thinking, we'll see if Rashi says anything on this here, but I think that's why the Torah adds Moledet Avicha, right? That she is related to you in blood, right? She's blood related. Achot Chahi, she is indeed your sister. Lo tegale ervata, you shall not expose her nakedness. Revealed. Legalot means to reveal, right? Okay, let's take a look. Here we go. If there's a Yud Aleph, ervat bat eshet avicha. Limeid, right? There we go. So this is interesting where Rashi goes on this, though. Limeid she'eno chayav al achoto meshivcha. So the Torah is actually limiting the prohibition here, according to the way this is analyzed. So it teaches that he is not guilty, right? Chayav literally means owing, but in other words, the idea of owing a sin offering or something like that, but that he hasn't transgressed anything. Al achoto mishivcha. If his sister is from a maidservant, let's keep going. Benochrit, or from a non-Jew. So if the father had relationships with a maidservant or a non-Jew, this is not considered a blood relation. Interesting. L'chach ne'emar, and for this reason it says, bat eshet avicha, and that's why it says the daughter of the wife of your father. And the point is, when it says wife of your father, beru'uya lekidushin, meaning that such a woman is fit for a full marriage with your father. To be called an isha, she has to be legally married to him. So if she is, in the sense that marriage applies to that relationship. So it's interesting. So there's a limitation on this particular law going on. Ervat achot avicha lo tegale. So the nakedness of your father's sister you shall not reveal or expose, right? She'er avicha she is the flesh of your father, or the kin. I thought it was a good way of translating this. She is your father's kin. Let's take a look. So there's no Rashi on this. So essentially we're saying you cannot marry an aunt. Ervat achot imcha lo tegale. So this would be a paternal aunt. This is the nakedness of the sister of your mother. You shall not expose. Ki she'er imcha hi, for she is the flesh of your mother. So neither paternal nor maternal aunt is permissible. Going on. Ervat achi avicha lo tegale. So interesting how we have to understand. And Rashi explains this because the relationship is through your father's brother. The nakedness of your father's brother, lo tegale, you shall not expose. And here he explains, el ishto lo tikrav. You shall not be intimate. Lo tikrav literally means to draw near. So it means, I think a good translation to understand this would be, you shall not have intimacy with his wife. Dodatcha, she is your aunt. So, and of course, this is not this isn't a blood relative. This is the wife of your father's brother, right? So. So Ervat, let's see what he has to say, what Rashi has to say. Ervat achi avicha lo tegale, right? The nakedness of your father's brother you shall not expose. Umahi ervato, and he's explaining the flow of the sentence. Rashi's explaining the flow of the sentence. What is implied is, and what do we mean by his nakedness? Elishto lo tigrav. You shall not be intimate with his wife. Let's keep going. Here we are. Ervat kalatcha lo tegale. So this is the nakedness of I believe this is your mother-in-law, right? Your mother-in-law. Lo tegale. Wait a second. No, sorry. Nope. No, forgive me. That is forbidden, but this is something else. Your kala is your son's wife. It explains what it is as we go on. So yes, that's it is. Your daughter-in-law is what it's talking about. You shall not expose the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. Eshet bincha, she is your son's wife. Lo tegale ervata, you shall not expose her nakedness. Eshet bincha. So again, even though these are not blood, interesting, right? These are not blood relationships. but they are simply, they're more social relationships. And in a sense, I think what the Torah is talking about is destroying the social fabric. By the way, this kind of stuff, if they're children that are born from these various relationships, it becomes very strange as to what their relationship is. Okay, so anyway, Eshet binchahi, she is your son's wife. Lo amarti, this is Rashi is paraphrasing as if God or the Torah is speaking, right? I amarti ella kesheyesh levincha ishut pa. So again, because it says eshet achicha, just like it says eshet avicha, remember it uses that phrase. So we're consistent about the Torah's use of this, right? What this is saying is, I'm only referring when your son has ishut ba, right? So we'll say when he is actually her husband, right? When she is his wife. Prat la'anusa. So this is the exception is, this leaves out, in other words, this doesn't apply to this law. The exception is la'anusa, a woman who the son raped, okay, who forced her, that's an anus. Ushivcha, or a maidservant, venochrit, or a non-Jewish woman. So this again, not a blood relation, right? But again, this, of course, I realize that this stretches our sense of what's appropriate and what isn't. By the way, the rabbis did extend the levels of prohibition regarding consanguineous relationships. But I try in my own mind to think, what are we talking about here, right? And whether or not, whether or not this is actually permissible, it isn't. Are we talking about situation of marriage? I mean, in general, I repeat what I said yesterday, that the desire is for us to live modest lives. So whether or not so this is, I think, an important issue. Whether the Torah explicitly forbids something or it doesn't explicitly forbid something, as it doesn't explicitly forbid it, it uses as an exception these particular three cases. I have to just wonder to myself, doesn't necessarily mean that it's permitted or encouraged. It can have to do more with the punishments that are involved. And the other thing is whether or not there might be some exceptional circumstances where it might be appropriate, and that the Torah is leaving that open without being able to tell you and give you evidence and supporting arguments for that. It's just interesting. And before I condemn this, because I don't want to condemn essentially anything that I think I'm failing to understand fully, at least to leave it open as those are possibilities. Onwards. Ervat isha uvita lo tegale. You shall not expose the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. In other words, she was married before, she has a daughter, you shall not expose it, but not only that, but the daughter of her son. In other words, her granddaughter, ve'et bat bita, or the daughter of her daughter, lo tikach, you shall not acquire, meaning you shall not marry here. That's the verb that's used in terms of marriage. Legalot ervata, to expose their nakedness. Sha'ara eina, I believe, let's see. Sha'ara, I need your help here, Laura. Can you tell me, what does it say, sha'ara? I failed to put that in.
Okay, so what is it? What is the word you're looking for?
Sha'ara. They are. It's at the end of this verse, and zima is.
Okay, I see it. I see it. Okay.
Zima is
okay. Her daughter, you shall not take in marriage her son's daughter or daughter's daughter to uncover her nakedness. They are close relatives.
There we go. So
it is evil
sha'ara.
counsel.
We've had that word before, and it's quite possible that when I was preparing this, I remembered what it meant, and that's why I didn't write it.
What's the word for neighbor?
I have kindred.
Shachein.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Kindred relatives.
yeah.
So is that
For
sha'ara?
neighbor?
Sha'ara? No, okay. No, I've never seen the word sha'ara as meaning neighbor. I'm trying to forgive me. I'm just blocking on it. Okay. Sorry, Lauren, one more time. How did you translate this? Kin?
It says here close relatives.
Okay, so kin.
But basically, I guess it means relatives.
Yes.
Because if Golda has kindred, it doesn't necessarily
Right.
imply that it has to be close, but
Okay. All right. And zima is lewdness. That's what zima is. But I'll put it in.
okay.
All right. So so again, okay,
This one says, instead of lewdness, it says evil counsel.
oh, that could be. That's true. That's how Rashi is translated. He bases it on the Aramaic. So I'm going to put compare Rashi.
Lauren, you asked for the word for neighbor. It looks like
Oh, I already
shachan.
looked it up. Yeah.
Okay.
It began with a shin and I was misremembering it.
Yeah.
Shachain.
Shachan. Yeah.
I know.
Now that I
So, and
see
it's related.
the lingo zone dictionary.
Yeah. I was just
Building
misremembering it.
Yeah, I was blocking for a minute too. Let's go into the Rashi, and that's probably going to be it for today, but let me see. Thank you for your patience. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the Rashi on this. Ervat Isha Uvita, right? The nakedness of a woman and her daughter. So again, this is the tractate Yevamot, which deals, of course, with initially with levirate marriages, and it starts off with people for whom levirate marriage can never take place. The complexity of levirate marriage is that I believe we've read that you cannot marry your brother's wife, but yet under these certain circumstances, of course, it's a mitzvah to marry your brother's wife. So we have a conflict of law, and this possibly makes Yevamot one of the things that makes Yevamot, because it talks about the various marriages that if it's a consanguineous marriage prohibited by the Bible, of the other consanguineous marriages, it doesn't fall for that at all. At any rate, it's only the one exception where it's your brother's wife. And it makes by the Yevamot is considered one of the most difficult tractates in the Talmud. So anyway, going on. Lo asar hakatuv ella. So here we go. Scripture only forbids al yedei nisu'ei harishona. The only reason, if someone could mute, please just check, make sure you're muted. Okay, if you're having difficult, okay, that's, give me a second. Sorry. Forgive me. All right. The scripture only forbid al yedei nisu'ei harishona. In other words, it only comes into play if you've married one of them. If you married the first one, this is the situation of the mother and the daughter, or the mother and the granddaughter, or the granddaughter and the mother. You follow me? So only if you've married one of them are you forbidden. Lachach ne'emar, and for this reason, it uses a different word. It says lo tikach, you shall not marry. Lashon kicha, in other words, of acquiring. Because what's happening, in a sense, is to take in addition to. V'chein le'inyan ha'onesh, and regarding the later chapter, in a later chapter, we read about the punishments for these particular relationships. And it uses the word asher yikach et isha, a situation of one who has acquired, meaning married, et isha, a woman, the et ima, and her mother. So, and that's vayikra kaf. So we see that in Leviticus chapter 20, where we read about the punishments that are inflicted for these particular consanguineous relationships. Lashon kicha, it uses the language of acquisition. Aval anas isha, wow, okay. But if he happened to this is a situation of rape. Rape is never permitted in Jewish law, obviously, right? But sometimes it uses the word lefatot, means to seduce, la'anos actually means to force. And what concerns me is that there's any implication here that that's permissible. But in a situation like that, and I can't even imagine how this person gets away with this, but it says mutar lisa ita, one is permitted to marry her daughter. This sounds, I told you, this is eyebrow raising, right? I mean, for me, coming across material like that just forces me into a position of saying, I have to put this, on hold, because my sense of justice and appropriateness is just totally challenged. And again, this may be only talking about a very limited area of law as far as this is concerned, but it's still, I fully admit this is puzzling, and somehow, I have to say at this point, I struggle with it. She'era hena, they are close relations. Krovot hein zolazo. That is to say, they, and okay, so Rashi's explaining the relationship. It means they are close to each other. The mother and the daughter, the mother and the granddaughter, etc. That's what the Torah is explaining. And what, it's, again, this just screams out for some context where to make this understandable, right? Okay, so here we go with the word zima, right? Which is counsel, right? Advice is how it's translated. And he tells you, Rashi tells you, eitzah, that's the word in Hebrew that, or in Aramaic that's used, here we go, is advice. Ketargumo, as is in the Targum. And let's take a look. Here it is, eitzat, there's the word. Eitzat chitin means like the advice of sinners. It is advice of sinners. And here we go. It's so interesting. He says, eitzat chatain, right? Or chitin, sheyitzrecha. And here he's saying, interesting. This is sort of underlined. Could be underlined. Your desire, right? Your evil inclination, your atzcha advises you lachto, to sin. In other words, your lust is driving you. And one which should be suspicious of that. Yes, go ahead, Lauren, please.
Mine says the same thing. The only difference is it translates the word zima as plotted, but then it goes on to say counsel of sins, which your evil inclination has counseled you to sin.
Right, exactly. So it's basically the same idea. So, and this is where we'll stop.
Plotted and counsel, I don't think are the same idea.
No, not quite the same. Not quite the same. I know. But eitzah, I guess depending on the context.
Oh,
yeah.
plotting against someone. And, okay.
Right. So it's talking about I mean, plotting, isn't that something that happens between two people? Advice, yes, it's a different kind of activity. I think you're right? To give someone advice might include plotting, whereas
because you may be giving them bad advice because you're plotting against them.
Right.
But what or you're, the good angel, bad angel sort of thing going on.
Yeah, well, that's another way of describing.
Like, I got a great idea.
Yes. Well, not a good idea. This definitely involves
not a good idea.
Your lust is driving you, I think, is what it's saying. And that's exactly what happens, is that your lust, the element of lust inside of you, overpowers your ability to reason. So I'm going to stop the share here. And
I found another interesting thing with Erev or Erev or whatever. Yes. It also means to awaken or wake up, as when it's an adjective. I know, right?
That sounds far.
I know.
My
You
sense of
mean
hearing,
awake?
No, so what it was in the when I translated it, that was
mean,
the first thing that
you
came
need
up.
to
Awake
Actually,
you need to give me the reference, Golda.
oh,
Because
from the dictionary. It was a Hebrew dictionary. So maybe that's yeah, modern usage.
still strange
Well, it would
because
have to be
basically
awake or awakened to be an adjective.
Hmm.
To wake up is an
Well, you know what
adjective.
okay, yes.
So,
Yeah.
awakened,
I mean,
awakened.
awakened
Awaken.
or awake, I don't know which it means.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So the
But I
point.
thought that was a huh? Yeah, little moment there. So
Okay,
it was
hold on a second.
interesting.
We're
problem
still
is-
recording. We're still recording. So let me
Mhm.
just say, for the sake of this, just to bring this to an end with the recording, is that array actually has more to do with mixing, blending. And so array can mean pleasant, right? That it can be, right? Satisfying, pleasant,
Oh,
but it has, and
when
that's
you
what
wake
there
up,
is thing.
Rabbi,
Yes,
it's blending your sleep and your being fully awake.
I see. Yeah, that could go there.
Ah, that could work.
Lauren,
Oh,
I
sleepwalking?
No,
Yep.
but when you wake up, you're kind of halfway in dreamland still, and
True.
you're
Yeah.
We're in the
slowly
process.
coming to the realization that you're no longer asleep.
Right.
And that arousal is a blending.
That's true. Okay, let
I don't
me
Yeah.
understand it.
We'll take
let me
that.
stop,
I don't
I'm gonna stop recording right
Oh,
now.
that was